What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video, and in this one, I'm going to be talking about the one and only Tesla stock and what you should be looking after for the future. I'm also going to break down why tomorrow is going to be an absolutely massive day for the markets, for the economy, for the EV sector, and Tesla as a whole, because we have the big FOMC meeting coming out, and this will really affect Tesla and the future Fed policies. So I'm going to break down why this is going to be so huge, how this may affect Tesla's share price for tomorrow, what you should be watching for during the meeting when it actually starts. Now, before I break anything down, before I get into any more details, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner, so don't take any of this as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire Tesla community as a whole. And the last thing is, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you're guaranteed up to 12 free stocks, each worth up to $2,000. And the best part is, any of these 12 free stocks could be a free Tesla share, a free NEO share, or a mix of all of them. It's a limited time offer. The offer ends in just 1 week. Check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. So Tesla was up about 0.12% for the day. We actually closed very close to my predicted target around 225. And the thing that's very interesting about this is Tesla was showing more relative strength than the overall market. However, even though it's awesome to talk about how well Tesla is doing, tomorrow is going to actually be a very different day. We're not going to be talking about fundamentals. We're not talking about what's going on with Elon Musk or what's going on with, any earnings or things like that. What's more important would be the federal funds rate, where it's going, what Jerome Powell announces, and the big FOMC meeting. So let's actually talk about that real quick. Just to give you guys some background, CPI came out for September. The overall number was on a bit of a downtrend because gas prices came down in September. But the problem is core CPI came out and this thing was just going up and up and up through the roofs. And that's not a good sign for our economy, for the markets. So this does incentivize the Fed to actually raise rates again. Now, PCE came out a couple of days ago and the Fed does prefer this measure. It was once again up another 0.5% in September. Once again, in line with expectations, we did expect it to go up. However, that's once again not the best of signs. So as a result, this is incentivizing the Fed to continue to hammer down on these rates and just raise them over and over again to actually charge commercial banks a lot more money. As a result, many big institutions and lenders tend to actually follow this, and this is why your mortgages, your credit card payments, they're going up again and again. The rates are just continuing to go up, and as a result, it causes people to actually think twice about like taking a car loan and things like that, taking a mortgage. That's slowing down demand, and it should start to slow down inflation as time goes on. Historically, when inflation goes up, it tends to actually be very sticky, so it likes to actually stay in these high zones for quite a bit of time before it starts to come down. So I'm hoping that we do see a big reversal relatively soon. Now, as far as the markets go, let me reload this to make sure this is up to date. But looking at CME Group data, we know the market has almost fully priced in a 75 basis point rate hike. We're actually about 85% of the way there, so we're pretty close. And this means that when Jerome Powell speaks tomorrow, all right, and what time is he speaking? Just a reminder, 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, the FOMC meeting starts. Powell is going to be speaking. So if he announces a 75 basis point rate hike for November, which I think he most likely will, it's not going to really affect the market that much because we almost fully priced that in. Now, the thing that is going to be more important would be the guidance after that. What's he going to do in December? What's he going to do for the future? Is he going to pivot? And here are my thoughts on that. So unfortunately, because inflation is still very high, I don't see him necessarily, pivoting just yet. But I do believe there is a possibility that the Fed could be getting ready to do so. So how does a pivot work? All right. I think a lot of investors have the wrong idea about it. They think that, oh, the Fed might just decrease rates instantly. That's not how it actually works. The way it works is the Fed raises rates at a high rate. So they're giving us 75 basis points again and again. I'm sure you guys remember the headlines. And then what they do is they slow down the rate in which they raise their rates. So then instead of 75 basis points, which is 0.75%, they're going to give us like 50 basis points a couple of times, maybe one more time. Then they give us a 25. Then they slowly hit the zero mark. So they're not going to raise rates again after that. Then they slowly start to decrease rates. And that's when the actual pivot starts. So are we there yet? Obviously, the answer is no. I don't see the Fed decreasing rates yet. However, the market also does not like uncertainty. and we could actually rally pretty hard off certainty. What does this mean? If the Fed comes out and they say something like, look, we're getting ready to pivot. We're getting ready. That doesn't mean they're actually pivoting yet, but they're getting ready to do so. This means that they could actually become a little bit less hawkish, a little bit less strict on policy, and give us like a 50 basis point rate hike for December, for example. So if the Fed is doing this, this would be a sign that they're getting ready to pivot, and that would be a good sign for the markets. Now, is that the best of moves? It really depends on inflationary data, because inflation is still very high, but it is still a big possibility because Jerome Powell is notorious for pumping the markets during certain periods of time. Recently, he has come out as being more aggressive and more stubborn to really show his place in this economy, but at the same time, it's not out of the question. So there's a chance that Jerome Powell wants maybe the end of this year to be less like drastic. He wants the market to hold up a lot better, and he might actually try to pump us up after tomorrow. However, for the future, that doesn't necessarily mean that 2023 is going to be easy, because he did also mention that a hard landing is also very possible. And he basically said this. He didn't actually say hard landing. He meant to say like a soft landing is less likely, right? That's his actual words. So I do anticipate that he may end up saying something like that. He may actually come out and give us 75 basis points for November, but he may come out and start changing, the Fed's course for December and so on and so forth, and the market could rally based off that. But once again, I'm speculating at this point. I don't truly know, but it is a big possibility. Now, as far as Tesla goes, we are seeing some big improvements. Firstly, the volume was about 62 million, which is pretty decent. It was better than yesterday's. And then going down right here, I noticed that the short volume percentage is starting to come down a bit, which is showing that the bulls are gaining the edge over this stock. That's a very bullish signal. Now, what else is important to note is compared to the overall market, Tesla was lagging behind, but now we're starting to actually push up a little bit better than the market as a whole. Compared to the QQQ, for instance, I think Tesla is doing pretty well as well. They're very, very closely correlated, as Tesla does tend to move with the NASDAQ. So it's good to see that as well. If you look at the price pairs ratio, all right, remember how this thing was dropping really hard as Tesla was showing relative weakness? We got a nice bounce, and this thing is starting to climb a bit. Once again, another good sign for Tesla, as we are showing more relative strength than the market. Now, Morgan Stanley, many big analysts are bullish on Tesla. Of course, that's a no brainer. However, looking at more data, 48.82% of the time we're actually green on Wednesdays. So we tend to actually be red on these days. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something similar, but it doesn't matter that much, because what matters more is what does Powell say and how this affects us over the next couple of weeks. And the last thing to really look at, let me find it right here. The overall short interest is starting to stabilize right here. So right now, investors are in the middle between buying short positions or going long. We're going to have to wait and see how this really plays out after tomorrow, because I do still anticipate this could start to come down a bit. So what's going on with Tesla? What's going on with the markets? All right. From a technical standpoint, if we zoom out of Tesla's charts on the 2-hour time frame, let's get this to work. You will notice that Tesla has been on a nice uptrend. We're just slowly starting to build the support zone. We're just pushing up over and over again, which is a good sign. But things could switch depending on what Jerome Powell says. He could really move the markets. Now, one thing I noticed in my previous videos that I mentioned is how the SPY can actually affect Tesla based off this formation. Remember, the market has a tendency of moving in unison, because when SPY is red, Tesla tends to be red. So does like the QQQ and the NASDAQ for this year, and the same thing vice versa. So I'm saying this because when you look at SPY, all right, from a macro perspective, this thing actually looks more bullish than bearish for the short term. Let me show you exactly why. So we had this trend I was mentioning yesterday, right? We have this descending, broadening wedge where we touch the top of the wedge, we come down to the bottom, top, bottom, right? And it's looking like we're almost repeating this move right here, kind of like how we came down pretty hard. We came down pretty hard. We touched the midline area. We touched the midline area. We came down right here. We came down, and then we're pushing up. And could we actually push up and touch the top of this wedge? The truth is, it's very possible. Very, very possible. But in order for us to get there, Powell has to pump the markets. We need something to actually push us up. What I'm thinking is going to happen to SPY is I think we're going to come down tomorrow when Powell speaks, of course. I think we're going to retest like 380. And after that, I think it's possible for us to get a bounce. Now, if Powell is like super aggressive and he says things the market doesn't like, it's very possible for this to be a fake out and we just kind of like collapse from here. We break below 375 and we start downtrending. But I just, like I mentioned, I just don't think that's the most likely possibility. I think we're more likely to get a nice bounce and start pushing up from there. If you look at something else that's interesting is the VIX. The VIX also came down, which is pretty ironic, but I do believe that we're coming very close to this key support zone. So we're actually sitting at it right now. There is potential for this thing to retest 22 bucks if we do see Powell pump the markets. It's something very important to note. The Nasdaq broke below 11,000. At the same time, I mean, you could argue that on the daily we have this inverse head and shoulders. I wouldn't necessarily count on that. We have a very bearish looking candle, but if we could get a nice bounce tomorrow, it would be very good for us to break past previous resistance levels and slowly push all the way back to this key zone around 11,200. I think we could break that if Powell pumps the markets. The last thing to look at would be the QQQ before I talk about Tesla. I have it, let me see, right here. For the QQQ, very similar trend as the Nasdaq on the daily. The overall candle does not look very good, but this could change in a flash depending on what Powell ends up saying. When we do tend to drop like this and have such bearish looking candles, we tend to see somewhat of a bounce before that. So I'm hoping for that tomorrow. But until then, it really all is dependent on Jerome Powell. Anyways, on Tesla, what's going on with this stock? So what I'm seeing on Tesla is we have been respecting an uptrend from a more macro perspective, but on a shorter time frame, Tesla was showing some nice relative strength in the markets. Now, I predicted with you guys that Tesla would actually see some downside for today, and I wasn't necessarily wrong about that because if you look at Tesla, we did gap up pretty hard to about 237, but since then we just started to crash and just come down. I wouldn't even call this a crash; it was more of a downtrend. We just bled and bled and bled and closed just barely in the green, up 0.12%. So I was pretty close about us seeing a big drop as the day went on. However, I do see that tomorrow there's going to be a slight continuation of this drop. I do think Tesla's going to come down temporarily when Powell speaks, especially, but then we do have potential to make a big bounce, and that's when this gap area right here could get filled. Because when you look at SPY, one last thing I forgot to mention and why this is relevant to Tesla is it looks like we had an accumulation right here. This means that institutions were, buying like crazy down here and getting ready to actually pump the markets to the upside. And the overall trend still looks quite bullish as long as we hold support. So that's the reason why I still believe Tesla's going to get a nice move to the upside. But before it comes, we're going to see some red, just very temporarily. So what do I think is going to happen for tomorrow? Okay, let me just draw this out. For tomorrow, I do think we're going to have some sideways price action in the very beginning of the day. All right? Just like this. Tesla might push to about like 230, maybe like that, come down, end up turning red, retesting 226, and just go back and forth temporarily. Then as we approach FOMC, remember Powell is going to be speaking around 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern time for our Americans out there. We're going to come down on Tesla. I'm pretty sure this is going to happen when Powell ends up talking. Tesla's going to see some red, so is the whole market. Tesla could end up retesting 220 tomorrow. But once Powell is like done talking, what he says is going to really affect us. All right. So anticipate lots of volatility, lots of crazy moves, both back up and down like this. But what I'm thinking is going to happen is Powell might pump the markets. All right. So let's just say that this is what Tesla does until Powell speaks. We revisit support around that 221 zone. And this is just like me being as cautious as possible. If Powell pumps the markets, Tesla might make a big move to the upside and just start to rally after the meeting and just go up and up and up and revisit 230 just like this. And if we even break 230, which is very possible, we can enter this chop zone around 233 to 230. We could get a big rally if Powell says something that the market wants to hear. All right, that's a more bullish possibility. But if Powell does not let us kind of like pump to the upside, if Powell says some like very hawkish things, he's very strict on his policies, he says things the market doesn't like, and he does not give us any signs of a pivot. All right. because the market is pumping based off that news article that came out from the Wall Street Journal that the market may end up seeing a pivot relatively soon from the Fed. Tesla might make a move like this where we actually start to come down depending on what Powell says. We retest 220, break below it, and we end up kind of dropping a little bit more from there. All right, that's very possible. So, anyways, guys, what is more likely to happen in my opinion? All right, because I gave you guys the two main possibilities. In my opinion, we're most likely going to see this one. I believe, and this is just my own bias, that Powell is going to cause a nice bounce. So don't make any investments based off this. This is just my 2 cents. I think that Powell wants the market to be relatively strong to end the year. So I don't think he's going to cause us to just drop really hard. And there have been a lot of indications after the Fed may be getting ready for a potential pivot. Now, do I think it's going to happen immediately? Like I mentioned, no, but they could be showing some signs of potentially giving us at least a date or some information about what their plan is, and the market likes certainty. So we could see a pump in a bullish continuation because of this. It also makes more sense for the market to rally approaching midterms. I mean, if the market crashes before it, it's not going to be good for the current party in power. So I want to make that as clear as possible. The market prefers a nice push to the upside. Many politicians want that too. Institutions want that, and I think that Powell is more likely to do that, cause us to rally afterwards. Now, I can't guarantee that's going to happen. I can't guarantee 50 basis points for December, but it certainly is a possibility. It is something that's worth noting. All right, so please be ready, guys. Be ready for anything. The market could be very unpredictable sometimes, but like I said, I would give this possibility like a 55% chance of happening, 55 to 60% chance. I would give this one a 45, maybe 40 to 45% chance of happening where Powell causes us to drop. So like I said, I think we're most likely going to see a nice pump. Inclined to thinking that, as crazy as that sounds. And if we get the big pump, guys, later on going into like the next couple of days for the week, by like Thursday, Friday, going into next week, Tesla could quite easily fill this gap and retest to 40 and even break past it if things are that bullish. So anyways, guys, that's essentially what I have for this video. Remember, we don't truly know what Powell is going to say, so we'll have to just wait and see on it. But like I said, upside in my opinion is a little bit more likely. That's just my 2 cents. Please have a great day. Enjoy what there is to offer in life, guys. Life is amazing. Tesla is also going to do amazing for the long term, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Tesla to the moon, because the long term future is still incredibly bright, and peace out.